The quiet hours before the sun rises. There is a sacred space where the world holds its breath and waits for you to awaken. In that space you are given a choice, one that may seem small, almost invisible to the hurried mind, but powerful enough to redirect the entire course of your life. Every man, every woman, every child who has ever transformed their destiny has done so not by leaping mountains, but by shifting a single stone. It is in the modest, humble, consistent steps that the foundations of a new life are built. Change your habits and you change the whispers of your thoughts, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the confidence in your stride, and ultimately the story you leave behind for the world to remember. Too many people wait for a grand moment of awakening, believing that change must arrive with thunder and lightning, with a revelation so intense that it breaks them open. But real transformation rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly. It arrives in the form of a new decision you make on an ordinary Tuesday morning, when no one is watching and no applause follows. It arrives when you choose to stand a little taller, speak with a little more truth, breathe with a little more intention, and honor yourself with a little more consistency. It arrives when you say again and again, "Today, I will try," and then the next day when you say, "I will try once more." Nothing about your future is fixed. Not your fears, not your limitations, not the doubts that echo in the back of your mind. They live only through your habits. What you repeatedly do becomes what you believe you deserve. Your habits are the fingerprints of your identity, and if you wish to create a new life, you must first shape a new set of fingerprints. But hear me clearly. No one is asking you to climb a mountain in a day, to heal in an hour, or to become extraordinary overnight. Even the tallest oak tree began as a seed so small that it could rest on the tip of a fingertip. But it grew, not because it demanded greatness, but because it accepted growth in silence, day after day, season after season, allowing the rain to teach it, the wind to strengthen it, and the sun to awaken it. You too are allowed to grow like that, slowly, gently, consistently, and without apology. There will be days when your old habits call out to you like familiar ghosts, days when comfort feels safer than transformation, days when you want to return to what you have outgrown simply because it feels easier. But remember, comfort has never built a future worth living. Only courage has, and courage does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Do it again." Sometimes it urges you to take one small step forward, even when yesterday's step felt like it drained the life out of you. When you change one habit, even the smallest one, you ignite a quiet revolution within yourself. You begin to realize that you are not held captive by your past, that you are not bound to repeat yesterday's mistakes, that you are not sentenced to the same patterns your parents or grandparents lived through. You are free to choose, free to expand, free to rise. But freedom is not something you stumble upon. It is something you cultivate like soil in a garden. You must pull the weeds of doubt, water the roots of discipline, and protect your growing dreams from the storms of discouragement. If you wish to change your future, start with a choice so small it almost feels insignificant. Drink the glass of water instead of the soda. Read one page instead of scrolling for an hour. Speak one kind word to yourself instead of repeating the same tired criticism. Walk for 5 minutes instead of surrendering to the weight of stillness. Whatever that small step is, take it. And once taken, take it again. And again, and again. Habits are not born from intensity. They are born from repetition. There will be people who misunderstand your journey. Some will laugh at your small steps because they cannot yet see the mountain you are climbing. Some will question your efforts because they are afraid to question their own. Some will try to pull you back into the familiarity of who you once were because it is easier for them to accept the old version of you than it is for them to embrace the growing, evolving, awakening soul you are becoming. But this life is not a rehearsal for their approval. It is an invitation for your freedom. You owe no one an explanation for your evolution, and you owe yourself a life that feels honest, aligned, and alive. Let your habits reflect that honesty. Let them reflect the quiet vow you make to yourself every morning, that you will not abandon yourself again, that you will show up for your own becoming, that you will carry your future with reverence and responsibility. People often ask, How do I change my life? And the answer is always the same: one choice at a time, one morning at a time, one breath at a time. When you understand that your life is not transformed through grand gestures, but through steady, faithful, daily acts, you free yourself from the pressure of perfection. You begin to understand that progress is not a straight line. It bends, it pauses, it wavers, it circles back, but it moves, always moves, if you keep walking. If you have stumbled, get up gently. If you have fallen back into old routines, forgive yourself quickly. Shame buries change, compassion nurtures it. Speak to yourself as you would speak to a child learning to walk, encouragingly, patiently, lovingly. Say, try again. You will get there. Keep going. The world is full of people who dream of change but never taste it, not because the dream was impossible, but because they never mastered the simple art of beginning. Begin, even if your voice trembles. Begin, even if you feel unready. Begin, even if fear sits beside you like an unwelcome guest. Fear cannot stop a determined heart. It can only make the starting line look further away than it truly is. There is a future waiting for you, a future shaped by the habits you choose today. There is a version of you that wakes up with purpose, speaks with confidence, stands with dignity, and walks with clarity. But that version does not appear by magic. It appears because you make space for it. It appears because you say, I am willing to try. It appears because you decide that you deserve a life that reflects the depth of your spirit. You are not meant to remain stagnant. Life is motion. Life is becoming. Life is the constant unfolding of your potential, and each small habit you shape is a thread in the tapestry of your destiny. So start with what you can do. Start with what you can carry. Start with the change that fits in your hands today, and trust that your hands will grow strong enough to hold more tomorrow. Every great journey begins not with a leap, but with a step. One step taken with intention, taken with hope, taken with belief. You are capable of extraordinary transformation, not because you must be extraordinary to begin, but because the act of beginning shapes you into something extraordinary. The smallest habits become the strongest foundations. The quietest steps become the loudest victories. The simplest choices become the most powerful turning points. And one day, perhaps sooner than you think, you will look back at the person you once were. The one who hesitated, the one who feared, the one who doubted, and you will smile with tenderness. You will say, thank you for taking that first small step. Thank you for believing that change was possible. Thank you for not giving up on the life we were meant to live. Because when you change your habits, you change the way you rise in the morning, the way you speak to your own reflection, the way you carry yourself through storms, the way you return to yourself after heartbreak, the way you dream, the way you love, the way you live. And when you change those things, you change everything. Your future is calling not in shouts but in whispers. It is asking for just one small step. And when you take it, the world will begin to shift beneath your feet. Every sunrise will feel like an invitation. Every challenge will feel like a teacher. Every moment will feel like a chance to begin again. So begin with courage. Begin with grace. Begin with a single habit that honors the life you desire. And as you take each small step, you will discover that you were never walking toward your future. You were awakening it within yourself. Change begins with the smallest decision you make consistently, and most people underestimate how powerful that truth really is. They imagine transformation as a sweeping moment that arrives with certainty and confidence, but real change rarely looks like that. Instead, it begins quietly in the background of ordinary days, in the kind of choices that appear almost invisible to anyone watching from the outside. When you decide to do something differently, even if it's as simple as waking up 10 minutes earlier, drinking more water, choosing a calmer response, or giving yourself 1 minute of silence before speaking, you plant the first seed of a life that will look and feel completely different. These small decisions may seem too modest to matter, but they are the earliest footsteps of a new path forming beneath your feet. Consistency is what gives those footsteps direction. Anyone can make a good decision once, but the power lies in repeating it. The human mind is shaped through repetition, through familiar patterns, through the rituals we perform without thinking. When you choose to make one small positive decision every day, you begin bending your mind toward a different way of thinking, acting, and believing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the person who once hesitated begins to feel capable. The voice that once doubted begins to soften, and the version of you that once felt stuck begins to move with purpose. Nothing dramatic happens outwardly, but inwardly everything begins to shift. Your brain learns, your heart steadies, and your identity expands. Most people never see the impact of small decisions because they dismiss them before they have time to grow. They tell themselves that one tiny change won't make a difference, that if the shift isn't dramatic, it isn't worth the effort. But the truth is that nothing powerful begins fully formed. A river that carves canyons starts with droplets. A tree that stands for centuries starts with a seed the wind could have carried away. Your future starts in the same gentle, humble way. One intention at a time, one choice at a time, one small act of alignment repeated until it becomes a part of you. Imagine your life 5 years from now. That future will not be shaped by a single moment of intensity, but by the accumulation of your smallest repeated decisions. Whether you read one paragraph a day or scroll for hours, whether you speak with kindness in a stressful moment or lash out from habit, whether you commit 5 minutes to your growth or surrender your time to distraction, each choice is a vote for the person you are becoming. These decisions do not vanish into thin air. They sink into the foundation of your character. They form the architecture of your mindset. They determine what you believe is possible for you. When you understand the weight of your smallest choices, you begin to reclaim the power you once thought you lacked. You no longer wait for motivation to strike like lightning. You no longer wish for someone to come rescue you or push you forward. You see that every day offers you a chance to do something small for your own evolution. And these small acts, when repeated with intention, become your quiet rebellion against the version of yourself that once settled for less. A single decision made day after day becomes a pattern. That pattern becomes a habit. That habit becomes a mindset. And that mindset becomes a destiny. Most destinies are not shaped by fate, they are shaped by repetition. You repeat what you believe you deserve. You repeat what feels familiar. You repeat what you practice. When you begin practicing better choices, no matter how small, you teach your mind to expect better, to seek better, to create better. There will be days when even small decisions feel heavy, days when your old habits call you back like a familiar comfort, days when the discipline you are building feels shaky and uncertain. But those are the days when consistency matters most. If you can make one small positive decision on your hardest days, you prove to yourself that change is not fragile. It is not dependent on ideal conditions. It is something you carry inside you, something you choose, something that grows stronger each time you show up for yourself. Every great transformation begins with the smallest step forward, the slightest shift in direction, the simplest act of choosing yourself. And when you choose that act consistently, your entire life begins to realign around the person you are becoming, the person who grows not from dramatic leaps but from deliberate, persistent, powerful small beginnings. Your habits quietly shape the identity you grow into long before you realize it. Every action you repeat becomes a thread woven into the fabric of who you are, and over time those threads strengthen into patterns that guide your choices, your reactions, your confidence, and even your sense of possibility. Most people believe identity is something fixed, something given to them by upbringing, circumstance, or personality. But identity is not a rigid stone. It is soft clay, constantly molded by what you do day after day. The way you wake up, the way you speak to yourself, the way you respond to challenges, the way you treat others, the way you spend your time. Every one of these habits leaves an imprint on your character. The quietness of habits is what makes them powerful. They work beneath the surface, shaping your mindset without announcing their influence. You may not notice how the repeated act of hitting the snooze button builds a habit of postponing responsibility. You may not see how one moment of negative self-talk becomes the beginning of a belief that you are incapable. You may overlook how skipping one small promise to yourself teaches your mind not to trust your own word. None of these moments feel loud or dramatic. Yet their whispers accumulate into a life you never intended to live. Because identity is not shaped by what you occasionally do, it is shaped by what you consistently do. On the other hand, the smallest positive habits also work quietly in your favor. When you take a moment each morning to breathe deeply and reset your thoughts, you begin crafting an identity rooted in calm and clarity. When you choose to read instead of scrolling endlessly, you cultivate a mind that seeks growth instead of distraction. When you speak kindly to yourself in moments of stress, you nurture an identity that believes in its own worth. These small, repeated actions become the proof your brain needs to recognize that you are someone capable of change, someone deserving of peace, someone willing to rise. We often talk about change as something external, new goals, new routines, new intentions. But the deeper transformation always happens inside. Your habits are not just behaviors, they are reflections of who you believe you are. If you carry habits that reinforce insecurity, doubt, or fear, you begin to identify with those limitations. But if you cultivate habits that reinforce discipline, curiosity, compassion, or strength, you begin to see yourself as someone who embodies those qualities. That shift in identity is what makes change sustainable. You can force yourself to behave differently for a short time, but lasting transformation only happens when your self-image evolves to match your habits. Most people struggle not because they lack desire, but because their habits and their identity are misaligned. They want success but carry habits that reinforce procrastination. They want confidence but repeat behaviors that reinforce hesitation. They want peace but engage in routines that feed chaos. When your habits contradict your goals, you feel trapped in a cycle of frustration. But when your habits reflect the person you want to become, you create alignment, and alignment is the birthplace of power. Take a moment to imagine the version of yourself you aspire to be. The one who walks with assurance, who speaks with clarity, who stays grounded in adversity, who loves without fear, who works with dedication, who rises after every fall. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is the natural result of habits practiced long enough to become identity. Every time you choose a habit that aligns with that vision, you cast a vote for that version of yourself. Even if the progress feels slow, every vote counts. Eventually, the votes accumulate, and the old identity loses its power, replaced by the one you intentionally shaped. There is something profoundly human about becoming the author of your own identity. It means you no longer live as a product of past experiences or inherited beliefs. It means you no longer accept limitations that were handed to you by fear or circumstance. It means you step into the quiet but fierce awareness that who you become is in your hands. The habits you choose today, even the smallest ones, are writing the first lines of the next chapter of your life. And each repetition strengthens the chapter that follows. Your habits are always speaking, always teaching, always shaping. They whisper into the mind, "This is who we are." And when you listen long enough, you begin to believe it. That is why awareness matters. That is why intention matters. That is why choosing the habits that honor your highest self matters. Because once those habits take root, they grow into the identity that guides every future step you take. Small steps taken daily build a future you once thought impossible. And yet most people underestimate the quiet power of gradual progress. We live in a world that glorifies sudden breakthroughs and dramatic leaps, but the truth is that transformation is rarely explosive. It is often incremental, almost imperceptible, like the slow erosion of stone by water or the steady growth of a tree stretching toward sunlight. Each tiny action you repeat becomes a building block, a brick laid in the architecture of your life. And when these small steps are taken consistently, when they are not abandoned because the results do not arrive immediately, they create momentum strong enough to carry you toward achievements that once seemed unreachable. The challenge is that small steps often feel insignificant. Waking up 5 minutes earlier, taking a short walk, reading one paragraph, saying a single kind word, these do not seem like much on their own. They seem like gestures too small to matter in the vastness of life's problems. And yet, it is precisely their modesty that makes them sustainable. Grand gestures are inspiring, but they are difficult to maintain. Small, deliberate actions repeated day after day, do not exhaust your willpower, they train it. They condition your mind to recognize that change is possible, that progress is not about perfection, but about persistence. Consider the person who dreams of health. They do not become fit by exercising for 3 hours once and expecting instant transformation. They become fit by choosing a small movement each day, by choosing one healthy meal, by consistently showing up even when motivation wavers. These small choices compound, not immediately visible but undeniable over time. In the same way, financial freedom is not achieved by a single windfall or investment, but by the repeated habit of saving, learning, and making conscious decisions about spending. Relationships are strengthened not by grand declarations of love, but by small acts of attention, empathy, and care. Your future is built not by rare miracles, but by the daily steps you commit to, even when no one is watching. Small steps also build resilience. When you move incrementally, you learn to tolerate discomfort without being overwhelmed by it. You learn that effort, even when it feels futile, accumulates into results. You learn patience. You discover that your own consistency is more powerful than external circumstances. Every time you show up for yourself, even in a modest way, you reinforce the truth that you are capable of creating change. And the accumulation of these steps, week after week, month after month, becomes unstoppable. It is a quiet revolution that works from the inside out, reshaping your confidence, your habits, your beliefs, and eventually your reality. The beauty of small steps is that they are accessible to everyone, regardless of circumstance. You do not need permission from anyone to take the next step. You do not need a perfect plan or ideal conditions. You do not need certainty about the final outcome. You only need willingness, the willingness to do what is within your reach today, and then the willingness to do it again tomorrow. Over time, these small steps create a trajectory you cannot ignore. They turn ordinary days into extraordinary results because they harness the power of consistency, focus, and intention. It is important to recognize that small steps are not a substitute for vision. Vision provides direction, small steps provide action. Without a clear destination, small steps may feel aimless. But when your actions are guided by intention, every minor decision, every brief effort, every modest habit becomes a thread in the tapestry of your future. The results may not be immediate, and the progress may be invisible for a season, but the foundation is being laid. The strength of your future self is being built silently, invisibly, irreversibly, with each small choice you make. There will be moments when doubt creeps in, when the distance to your goals feels overwhelming, when the patience required seems unbearable. But this is precisely why small steps are so potent. They allow you to move forward, even when the weight of the journey threatens to paralyze you. You do not need to climb the entire mountain at once. You only need to place one foot in front of the other. One foot, one choice, one action. And with each step, your confidence grows, your direction solidifies, and the mountain becomes less insurmountable. When you commit to small, daily actions, you begin to notice a shift in your perception of what is possible. What once seemed distant or unattainable starts to feel achievable. The impossible becomes probable. The improbable becomes possible. And before long, the sum of these small, persistent steps transforms your life, shaping a future that you may have once thought existed only in your dreams. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become, and yet it is often misunderstood. Many think of discipline as harsh, joyless self-denial, as though it is a punishment imposed upon the soul. But true discipline is not cruelty. It is respect for yourself, a quiet insistence that your life matters enough to deserve your full attention and care. It is the choice to honor your potential even when your moods waver, even when distractions scream for your energy, even when the temptation to settle for less is strongest. Discipline is not a single act but a series of decisions, repeated over time, each one strengthening the bridge that carries you from the present toward the person you dream of becoming. The problem with most people is that they wait for motivation to appear, as if the universe owes them inspiration on demand. They imagine that desire must precede action, when in truth action often precedes desire. Discipline allows you to move forward when desire is absent. It is the willingness to show up even when the heart is heavy, The mind is tired or the world seems indifferent. When you cultivate discipline, you learn to rely not on fleeting emotions, but on steadfast habits. You learn to build momentum through consistency, and that momentum is far more powerful than the bursts of energy that come and go with mood swings or fleeting inspiration. Discipline is also a mirror of your priorities. Every choice you make, every action you take reflects what you truly value. If you discipline yourself to wake early, to exercise, to read, to work, to respond with patience instead of anger, you are sending a signal to yourself and to the world that these things matter. You are claiming ownership over your life, refusing to be buffeted by the whims of circumstance or the distractions of the moment. Every time you resist a temptation that would derail your growth, every time you choose the harder but wiser path, every time you honor a commitment to yourself, you reinforce the bridge between who you are and who you wish to become. Most people stumble not because they lack ability, but because they lack the bridge that discipline builds. Talent, intelligence, and opportunity are valuable, but without the consistent choices that form the path to excellence, they are wasted potential. Discipline transforms intention into action, action into habit, habit into identity, and identity into destiny. It is the invisible architecture behind every achievement, the quiet engine that drives progress even when the world cannot see it. The more you practice it, the stronger it becomes, and the easier it is to carry yourself forward step by deliberate step. Discipline also teaches resilience. Life will always challenge you. It will tempt you with shortcuts, reward distraction, and confront you with setbacks. Without discipline, these forces can easily derail your growth. With discipline, however, you develop a steady center, a foundation that allows you to rise after failure, to persist after disappointment, and to move forward despite obstacles. Discipline is the inner muscle that keeps you anchored when storms rage, when fear whispers, when doubt presses against your resolve. It is what allows you to continue building your life even when immediate results are unseen, because you understand that lasting transformation requires patience and faith in the process. Another dimension of discipline is its quiet power to shape character. It is not only about achieving goals, but about who you become along the way. Every act of self-control, every decision to honor your responsibilities, every commitment to your own growth strengthens virtues such as patience, integrity, courage, and focus. Discipline is the foundation of honor. It is the cultivation of trust in yourself, the understanding that you are reliable, capable, and worthy of your dreams. Through discipline, you teach yourself that you can be counted on, not only by the world, but by the most important person in your life, yourself. Discipline is not a one-time effort. It is a lifestyle, a continuous practice, a daily devotion to moving forward no matter the circumstances. It is the bridge you must cross again and again, for life is ever-changing, and new challenges always arise. Each day presents an opportunity to reinforce that bridge, to add strength to its span, to step closer to the person you long to be. It is in these small, repeated acts, choosing what is right over what is easy, what is lasting over what is fleeting, that the bridge becomes unshakable, carrying you safely from the life you live today to the life you are capable of creating. Discipline is ultimately freedom. It is freedom from chaos, from indecision, from regret, from the tyranny of unbridled impulses. When you build the bridge of discipline, you are not confining yourself, you are empowering yourself. You are creating a path where none existed before, a path that leads not to a dream deferred, but to a life deliberately designed, step by deliberate step. Each choice, each act of self-control, each moment of consistent effort is a plank in that bridge, extending your reach beyond the limits you once believed were permanent. Letting go of old patterns creates space for new possibilities, and yet most of us cling to what no longer serves us because it feels familiar, safe, and known. We hold on to habits, beliefs, relationships, and routines long past their usefulness, mistaking comfort for security. But growth requires release. Just as a tree sheds its leaves in autumn to prepare for new growth in spring, we too must learn to let go of the things that weigh us down, that restrict our vision, that prevent us from stepping fully into the life we are capable of creating. Holding on to old patterns keeps us tethered to a past that no longer reflects our truth, while letting go opens the door to transformation, opportunity, and freedom. Old patterns have a way of convincing us they are essential. They appear in our thoughts, our behaviors, our reactions, and our decisions. They whisper in our ears, telling us that change is dangerous, that we are safer if we remain the same, that we cannot survive without the familiar. These patterns often formed in response to past experiences, fears, or disappointments, and while they may have served a protective purpose once, they rarely serve us now. The challenge is recognizing that what was once helpful can become a cage. The habits that comforted us, the fears that guided us, the routines that occupied us. All of these can quietly limit the fullness of our potential if we refuse to release them. Letting go begins with awareness. You cannot discard what you do not see. You must notice the patterns that run through your life, the automatic thoughts, the repeated actions, the recurring choices that no longer align with who you are becoming. This awareness requires honesty, courage, and self-reflection. It demands that you look at yourself without judgment and acknowledge where your habits, beliefs, or attachments are keeping you small. Once you see them, you can decide to release them, not as an act of denial, but as an act of liberation. Letting go is not forgetting. It is consciously choosing not to carry what no longer belongs to you, to make room for what does. The process of letting go also requires patience and gentleness. Old patterns are often deeply rooted, intertwined with identity and comfort. They resist change because they are familiar, even if they are harmful. It takes courage to unlearn, to step into discomfort, to risk the unknown. But every act of release, no matter how small, creates space for something new. It is in that space that growth happens, that creativity is born, that new habits take root, that new relationships flourish, and that new opportunities appear. Letting go is not a one-time event. It is a continuous process of evaluating what serves you and what does not, and making conscious choices to align with your highest vision. Letting go also opens the door to self-compassion. We often hold on to old patterns because we judge ourselves too harshly for past mistakes, failures, or regrets. We carry guilt, shame, and resentment, which reinforce old habits and prevent us from moving forward. But releasing these burdens allows us to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding. It allows us to forgive ourselves, to recognize that the past does not define us, and that each moment is a new opportunity to choose differently. When we release the old, we reclaim our power to act with intention, to shape our life with purpose, and to embrace the possibilities that exist beyond the limitations of yesterday. New possibilities emerge when we create room for them. Change cannot happen in a space already occupied by outdated beliefs, routines, or attachments. When we let go, we make room for growth, for innovation, for courage, for experiences we may have once thought impossible. The emptiness left by what we release is not a void to fear. It is fertile ground, ready for planting new seeds of transformation. Every small act of letting go, whether it is a thought, a habit, a relationship, or a fear, clears space for something greater to enter, something aligned with the person we are meant to become. Letting go is also an affirmation of trust. Trust in yourself, in the process, and in life itself. It is a declaration that you are capable of navigating uncertainty, that you can face discomfort without fear, that you can embrace change without losing yourself. Each time you release what no longer serves you, you demonstrate faith in your own resilience, in your ability to grow, and in the infinite possibilities that life offers. You learn that holding on too tightly does not protect you, it limits you. And in the gentle art of letting go, you discover freedom, clarity, and the power to shape a future that reflects your highest self. The act of letting go is not simple, and it is not easy, but it is essential. It is the conscious decision to step out of repetition, to refuse patterns that keep you small, to embrace transformation. When you release the past, you create room for innovation, creativity, and growth. When you discard the unnecessary, you reveal the path that leads to your potential. Every step taken in letting go is a step toward the life you are capable of designing, the person you are capable of becoming, and the future you are capable of living. Every mindful action becomes a vote for the future you desire, And yet, too often we underestimate the quiet power of intention expressed through small, deliberate choices. Life is not a series of random events that happen to us without our participation. It is a tapestry woven from the threads of countless decisions, both big and small, that we make each day. Each choice, whether acknowledged or overlooked, casts a subtle ripple across the currents of our lives. It is in these ripples that the architecture of our destiny is shaped, the contours of our character are formed, and the trajectory of our future is determined. To act mindfully is to recognize that every thought, every word, every movement carries significance, and that consistency in these small actions is what transforms dreams into reality. When we act mindfully, we are present in the moment and aware of the consequences of our choices. This is not simply a matter of avoiding mistakes or missteps. It is a deeper awareness that our daily actions, repeated over time, build the foundation for who we become. Every act of kindness, every commitment to personal growth, every moment of discipline is a vote toward the person we aspire to be. Conversely, every act of neglect, every surrender to distraction, every compromise of integrity is a vote against that vision. It is not enough to hope or to dream. Hope without action is inert, and dreams without deliberate choices remain unrealized. Mindfulness transforms potential into tangible progress by aligning our daily behavior with our higher intentions. The challenge is that the significance of small actions is often invisible in the immediate moment. When we choose to read a single page of a book, when we speak a gentle word to someone who is struggling, when we resist a temptation we know will harm us, these acts may feel inconsequential. Yet their impact accumulates quietly, gradually shaping our identity, our habits, and ultimately our destiny. The mind often dismisses these actions as trivial because they lack immediate, dramatic feedback. But the truth is that it is the repetition of these small, mindful choices that compounds over time into profound transformation. One small decision repeated consistently has the power to shift the trajectory of a life, to open doors that once seemed closed, to cultivate resilience and clarity in ways that extraordinary, isolated actions cannot. Mindful actions also teach us the value of responsibility. When we acknowledge that every choice matters, we step into our power rather than casting blame outward. Life is full of circumstances we cannot control, but the way we respond, the way we act, and the way we cultivate our inner world is entirely within our grasp. By acting mindfully, we claim ownership of our experiences rather than succumbing to the illusion of powerlessness. Each conscious decision, no matter how small, is an assertion that we are capable of shaping our reality, that we are not passive observers, but active participants in our own growth and fulfillment. The accumulation of mindful actions creates momentum. It is not in dramatic, isolated efforts that lasting change occurs, but in the steady, deliberate alignment of choices over time. When you consistently act with intention, you begin to notice subtle shifts in your character, your energy, and your perspective. You find that patience emerges naturally, that confidence grows quietly, that resilience strengthens without fanfare. The cumulative effect of these small actions is transformational because it shapes not only what you do but who you become. It creates a feedback loop in which your identity, reinforced by mindful behavior, encourages further mindful choices, which in turn deepen your identity, expanding the possibilities of what you can achieve. Every action carries symbolic weight as well. By acting mindfully, you communicate to yourself and the world the values you hold most dear. Each conscious decision is an expression of the person you wish to embody. If you act with integrity, even in unseen moments, you reinforce the truth that integrity is central to who you are. If you act with patience, even when circumstances tempt you to react hastily, you reinforce the truth that patience is a cornerstone of your strength. If you act with compassion, even in small interactions, you reinforce the truth that empathy and understanding guide your relationships. Over time, these repeated actions become the building blocks of a life aligned with your deepest principles. Mindful actions also cultivate awareness of interconnectedness. Every choice we make affects not only ourselves but also those around us. The ripple effects of our behavior extend far beyond the immediate moment, touching lives in ways we may never fully perceive. By choosing each action carefully, we honor this interconnectedness, recognizing that our deeds contribute to the collective experience of the world. This awareness nurtures responsibility, empathy, and a sense of purpose, reinforcing the idea that living mindfully is both an individual practice and a contribution to the broader human story. The process of cultivating mindful action requires discipline, attention, and intentionality. It demands that we pause before reacting, that we consider the consequences of our behavior, and that we weigh our choices against the vision we hold for our lives. It is a practice of self-awareness and reflection, requiring honesty about where our actions are aligned or misaligned with our goals. It is a commitment to integrity, a willingness to act with consistency even when no one is observing, and a recognition that the seemingly small or ordinary acts of daily life are, in fact, the very substance from which our future is constructed. One of the most powerful aspects of mindful action is its ability to shift perspective. When we act consciously and deliberately, we move from a reactive existence into a proactive one. We recognize that we are not merely drifting through life, buffeted by external events and circumstances. Instead, we are architects of our own reality, shaping the trajectory of our lives with intention, one choice at a time. Each action becomes an affirmation of our agency, a statement of commitment to our growth, and a tangible expression of the vision we hold for the person we are becoming. When you begin to view each action as a vote for your future, you cultivate a sense of purpose in every moment. Ordinary activities take on extraordinary significance because they are the building blocks of the life you desire. Brushing your teeth, preparing a healthy meal, responding with patience in a tense situation, dedicating time to learning. Each act is no longer trivial. Each is a conscious contribution to the identity you are shaping, the habits you are reinforcing, and the future you are bringing into being. Over time, this collection of mindful actions transforms the seemingly mundane into the extraordinary, revealing that the life we dream of is created not through dramatic gestures alone, but through the consistent, intentional choices we make every day. Mindful action also strengthens resilience. When life challenges you, when setbacks occur, when doubt or fear rises, the habits formed by consistent mindful choices provide a foundation of stability. Your mind, trained through repeated acts of intentional behavior, knows how to navigate difficulty, how to respond with clarity, and how to maintain alignment with your deeper goals. This cultivated resilience allows you to persist in the face of adversity, to maintain focus amid chaos, and to continue voting for the future you desire even when circumstances are uncertain or discouraging. Each mindful action becomes part of a broader tapestry, interwoven with the choices and efforts of every day. They accumulate into momentum, forming habits that reinforce identity, values, and purpose. As you continue to act with intention, the results become visible not as sudden miracles, but as the natural consequence of repeated, deliberate action. The life you imagine begins to take shape because it has been constructed from the careful, consistent decisions you have made. The person you aspire to become is realized because you have voted for them in every small, mindful action.